Hollywood is doing things right and getting things wrong. People tend to have a strong opinion on casting cisgendered, non-LGBTQ plus individuals for roles and that are telling our stories. I know for myself, well, I'm gonna reserve my opinion for myself, but Ashlee, you're the newest one to our panel today. Glad to have you here. Let's talk about this because this is something that is now more than ever happening. More than ever. Yes. In a time where Hollywood seems to be doing what they can to have initiatives and taking steps to make sure that our stories are being told by the right people. How are we feeling about this?
I think in general, the end goal is to be able to play any role, irregardless of what your orientation is. Obviously we want to keep race true to the character. But for me, when I first heard of the conversation, it made me really uncomfortable that there were cisgender people playing trans characters when the trans community on a national average still makes less than $10,000 a year. So not only are you missing out on an opportunity to thoroughly understand a disenfranchised community, but you're missing out on an opportunity to economically empower them.
Right. I think that's what they are saying. But on the flip side, you have actors who, okay, Darren Criss, who says he's no longer going to play LGBTQ plus community, an actor from that community, because he doesn't want to take that role from another gay person. But then you have other actors like Cate Blanchett who say, oh, well, I feel like it's my duty to tell these stories and to take myself out of my experience and try to put myself into another person's experience. But I personally feel it's way more nuanced than that, because there is no way that you can, no matter how hard you study, how long you study, whatever research you do, that you can ever know what it truly is to walk through the world or move through the world or exist in the world as a person of our community in any capacity of any facet. Dude, Danny.
I'm sorry, I'm getting really peppered already.
It's okay.
That, I see where you're coming from with that. That statement I don't necessarily agree with.
Okay.
I think, like Ashlee said, you should be able to play whatever, just not right now. Until there's enough roles, until there is equality in the amount of work that there is for the LGBTQ plus community, opposite the straight community, then I don't agree with it. I think that there is that amount of work, actually, ironically enough, in theater. So I feel like theater can have all the fluidity it wants. It deserves it. It has earned it. Theater has been a friend of the LGBTQ plus community forever, and since the beginning. So I feel like theater can have that. For film, for television, for what we're dealing with now, absolutely not. I'm sorry, Cate Blanchett, because it's just not there. There's not enough. And I tell you, a bigger problem that we have here is enough bankable LGBTQ stars who can help greenlight projects. I'm directing my first feature right now, and I'm in auditions, and there just aren't enough. I mean, I want to cast queer excellence. I want to cast everyone across the board who is gay in the movie as gay. But there's not enough people that can greenlight my film because there aren't enough stars. Now we have something like an opportunity like Elton John had with his story. No offense to anyone in the film, but you cast a straight person as one of our LGBT. You had an opportunity there to cast someone who is LGBTQ and make them a star.
Right.
To find somebody and put them in a prestige film, make them win an Oscar, and make them become a star. That then they can go be in my little indie movie next summer. You know what I'm saying?
Plug.
I'm just saying, it isn't a plug. But my point is, it is an anger issue for me. It's a real point of sensitivity, because if there were enough roles in there, Heather and I would be too busy to come to work. You know?
But I also think that the viewers and the consumers have a social responsibility as well to advocate for these things. I think you brought up a really good point. It is about the bottom line dollar and the box office. And so when we start looking at the fact that the LGBTQ community has a spending power of over $1 trillion, when we start pushing to see more people who look like us on television and who have the same shared experiences, then we can be able to leverage that spending power to push that objective. And I feel oftentimes there aren't many people that are invested enough in us as a community, so we should invest in ourselves before we can ask others to invest in us too.
Wow, that's the nail on the head. What do you say to people though? Excuse me, who say things like, okay, well, we need to have these bankable cisgender stars to get a broader audience to have our stories be told. Like they're like almost in a sense they're doing us a favor, saying, look, we know, as you said, how hard it is to get these stars and these roles that are of the LGBTQ plus community. So we're doing you a favor. We'll have Jake Gyllenhaal or Charlize Theron or I don't know, anyone else play these roles to get our stories to wider people, to a wider audience that maybe indie film about LGBTQ plus content wouldn't necessarily have. Is that, I mean,
this is the indie queen right here. So like, I've seen your work.
I mean, I came out publicly in 2004 during the press junket for Princess Diaries 2. A film that starred myself, Annie Hathaway, Julie Andrews, Hector Elizondo, directed by Gary Marshall. And, you know, from that time to now, what I've found at least, I've had a few opportunities to play LGBTQ characters, which is great and fabulous and wonderful. On the other side of that, I was told I would never work again if I came out, that I wouldn't be believable as a straight actor anymore. I would never be able to have a potential love interest of the opposite sex because everyone would just view me as a lesbian, right? And I know, I feel the sigh. And so I'm all about indie filmmaking, and that if you're not getting the opportunities by those big studios, you go out and you make your own.
Right.
You know, you're exactly right. And within that too, there are so many paths and so many avenues where it's, you know, if I'm working with a straight actor and I see that they have more power than I do, I get to have a conversation with them. How can you help open this door more for all of us? You know, because
we see that happening right now too with Ryan Murphy and Pose,
which premieres tonight. And,
yes,
I mean, history making, great content.
Janet Mock's directorial debut.
Which another great point that, and Danny, I'll get to you in just a second. I will say this. I still stand by that. I do think that we need to have more of our community in leading roles. Yes, because when you're on these red carpets and you see, okay, Jared Leto won an Oscar for Dallas Buyers Club playing a person from our community, which was a brilliant performance, right? But then he takes off that costume and he's on the carpet as this cisgender man, heteronormative. So it's just, I think for younger generation, it sends a weird message of representation on television. I do think bringing up Pose, awesome show. I'm glad that Hollywood's finally figuring out that, fine, if we can't get on the front lines in these starring roles, LGBTQ plus people that have star power, let's at least get them in the room to make sure that the stories are being told accurately and depict how we move through the world. That to me is important.
Interesting you said something, excuse me. It's interesting you said something about being in the room because I'm dealing with this with my film right now. Like I can't even get my script to certain LGBTQ actors because of the budget. Like I can't even get it past their agents because unless we have a bankable star. You said what's the answer? The answer is me not making a $5 million film, it's me making a $500,000 film. If that's what I have to do in order to break through and tell the story the way I want to tell it with queer excellence and with people that are in the parts, that's the way I'm gonna have to do it.
And that also goes to as well, because you know, I was talking about studios, but in terms also of indie filmmaking, you know, you have financiers, you have investors. You know, again, to your point, you know, how many films is Ellen contributing her dollars to? You know, like where are the people that are the LGBTQ quote unquote icons? Where is there?
I think a lot of it has to do with gatekeeping. This idea that there could only be one of us in a specific space at a particular time. And this is what makes it so awesome, even about Pose, was that like it wasn't this moment of like, okay, one of you are going to be the main trans character, and then maybe about 2 seasons later we'll bring the next one in. It was like, no, actually Stephen Canal Mouse was the one who wrote and created it, and Ryan Murphy used his social capital and his skin in the game to, as a cisgender white man, to bring that kind of visibility to other people and help Steven navigate. And so it's pretty much just normalizing our presence in these spaces. But the truth is that the social energy around LGBTQ issues in Hollywood, even in 2019, is still not where it needs to be.
I adore, admire, and respect Cate Blanchett, but if she wants to live in a world where we do have that fluidity, which we should have, and where we should be, then she needs to say, if a role comes through in a movie about marginalized people, then I will do it for scale.
Period.
I don't. You said you guys both. Everyone here on the panel talked about safe spaces and how Hollywood. I personally don't feel, as a gay man in Hollywood, that there is a real safe space, and I believe that 100%, and I wrestle with that as well, because I think that people want to use the tropes and the stories for entertainment value, because what is Hollywood? It's an entertainment machine, right? We want to be entertained. We want, from the entertainment, we want to extrapolate dollars and cents. But I think that when you close the door, those are the same people that are calling us and that are and I'm sorry, I mean to use the words, but those are things I've heard on sets.
I'm doing stand-up, excuse me, doing stand-up comedy, I've had the same issue happen to me. We don't have a gay male headliner. What, are gays not funny? Like, I just don't understand. But like, we've had all, all other kinds of headliners. We've had a lot of lesbian headliners.
And within that too, though, those lesbians are typically masculine.
And that's another thing, is how, okay, Heather, thank you for bringing this up, because that was another, I wanted to segue into the different types, or how Hollywood sees gay or the LGBTQ plus community. Being a black male, they feel that black men are the epitome of masculinity, hyper masculine, almost to a point of a savage degree. Okay, that our masculinity, we go out and we hit people over the head with clubs and drag our food back. So when they see a black gay male, they think we're all, yes, work, hunty, get it, yes, work, which that is a colorful depiction of the LGBTQ plus community. That's someone's existence. But Hollywood likes to paint us with one color. We're monolithic. We're monolithic. We're not. We're just one type.
One dimensional.
One dimensional. We're not different things. So when you brought up that they see a lesbian as either being the lipstick lesbian, oh, she's feminine, but her counterpart is hyper masculine.
Or we're supporting role.
Right.
Like, we're not the main person, we're the sidekick. We serve an ancillary function in those roles. And so it's very revolutionary to have an LGBTQ identified individual as a lead character, and then actually have a storyline there that doesn't consist of just being a punchline or a joke or a trope.
Right. Danny?
That was one of the things with my character in Mean Girls. I felt like it was the first time I read a script where like he could, like a gay person, especially a gay person of size, which is a whole nother unicorn in the rainbow.
Sure.
But like I saw be able to walk down the hallway and be able to breathe and not have his head shoved in a toilet or be thrown in the locker. Like I thought that even though I was at the time closeted for the same reasons of the people telling me the things they were telling Heather, I felt like it was an opportunity to do that. But then it didn't work for many years after that, because everything after that was just the Hollywood sissy role. Again, like you're saying, like they weren't, especially in that time, 2004, there wasn't a lot of roles being written. It was like he comes in with a feather boa and mascara. How funny is he? Like, and not really exploring what it was about his character. He was being used as a punchline.
Well, it's a missed opportunity too, as far as, again, going back to the bottom line, Hollywood is not a place where they're social justice driven. It is about the dollar. And so Black Panther had an opportunity. Let's just go there when we talk about diverse communities. Black Panther made box office history. And it was because instead of it being a bunch of cis hetero white men in the space talking about what they think Black people want to see, there were people in the writing room, there were Black characters, the director, that everyone involved was a part of the community. And we saw what happened with that. Right. More people turned out to support it.
Yeah, no, and it also makes me think of inclusion writers. You know, like this is the movie that I'm doing now. It's an indie film, and so that also means no money. And it was the first time that I said the only way that I'm saying yes to this is if we have an inclusion writer, and that not just above the line talent, but also below the line crew, etc. And I feel that I don't have I have enough power to be able to ask for that. But it also took me traveling this road to recognize that I have the power to say no, and I have the power to ask for what I want. And if they're not willing to meet those requirements, I'm able to walk away.
There's immense power in that.
And here's the thing, I financially cannot afford to walk away, and that's where I feel it also is push come to shove of, everybody has to eat. We all have bills to pay, right? As actors, as people in this business, we could be out of work for 9 months, 11 months. And
Blacklist is real.
Yes.
If you push the wrong button, they will get you right together. Wigs will be snatched.
I mean, cancel culture is a thing professionally and unprofessionally.
And you can't prove it.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, no, it's not that. You just weren't, what we're looking for. But then you have people like Tiffany Haddish, who pulled that trick where she left her purse in the room with the recording device, and then she would come back and be like, "Whoops, I forgot my purse." And then she played it, and she would hear all these things that people were saying about her, like, "No, she's not urban enough," or "You know what, she's a little bit too urban," or "You know what, we should just scrap this and make this a white woman." So those are examples of some of the dialogue that's happening behind the scenes. And until we completely shift the social ecology around LGBTQIA identity in Hollywood, we're still gonna continue to see some of these dynamics play out.
Here's a unique perspective too. I'm seeing a lot of actors right now, like I said, and some of them aren't ready yet. Some of them aren't ready yet talent-wise because they haven't had the opportunity to have all these roles and develop their own gifts.
Yes.
Because they're not even given the opportunity to develop their gifts and bite their teeth on and sink their teeth into other roles. So that's a big problem too. We have to start growing our own stars. We have to start casting these people and giving them opportunities to grow.
That's a great point, and you said about owning. It's all about autonomy, essentially, yes. But at the same time, though, I think it also leans back on us taking care of each other, because when we are, I hate using the word victims, but when we are inside of something that's a little bit hostile, everyone's looking out for themselves. People don't have the bandwidth to say, Heather, let me check in with you. Ashlee, you good? Danny, what's going on? Because it's survival of the fittest, because we're forced to amass this armor in order to survive.
Well, armor, we're also talking about the enemy and we're being attacked, right? But I have to, speaking directly to performers that are LGBTQ, go out for these roles. I know on Looking, we had HBO's Looking, we had a huge lashback from the LGBTQ community about how undiverse, quote unquote, we were. But the creators were like, we tried to cast Latino and Black men in these roles and they didn't want to come in and audition.
But sometimes they're not inviting us though, because that was the issue that Trace Lissette and Jamie Clayton, two trans actresses, talked about in some of their interviews, was that the issue with Scarlett Johansson playing a trans person or any cisgender person playing a trans person is that they at least get to audition for roles that are cisgender characters and trans roles. We're only invited to trans roles. So if there is an opportunity to play a cisgender role and a trans person, especially one that's a little bit more visibly trans, comes in the room, they don't even get seen, they don't get taken serious.
We certainly meet the rainbow ceiling. Once I was auditioning for close to getting Turtle in Entourage and close to getting roles in Sopranos. And then as soon as I did Damien and Mean Girls, that was it. Gay roles only. And I wasn't allowed in those same rooms I was in before, the chubby guy and the Italian guy and all the other tropes, all the other boxes that Hollywood wants to put me in. I was only allowed to be in the gay role for a while.
And then when they have those roles, they're poorly written. Well, not now, but back then they're poorly written. I can't even recount how many times I would see the very few products that would have a trans person. They were always destitute. They were always HIV positive.
Laying in chalk on the ground on CSI.
Right. It was never celebratory.
Punchline, a trans woman walks into a bar.
Our movies and our stories that get greenlit are sad.
Right. Yeah. But I will say this though too, that I hope that with all the initiatives, I'm glad you brought up the inclusion writers and all the initiatives that Hollywood has coming down the pike for what we need as far as inclusivity in Hollywood and inclusion, that it's just not a Band-Aid we're putting on to essentially shut us up. Because Hollywood has also been known to say, okay, look. Fine, we'll give you Pose. We'll slap it. Are you happy now? Yeah. Okay, great. So let's go back to doing our dirt.
Well, it's intellectually lazy. It's not very difficult. We're not even asking you to do the heavy lifting. You have people like SAG-AFTRA who are hosting these conversations about diversity and inclusion in film and television. You have CAA. You have all of these players in the game who are opening up the space to have the conversation. The only thing that we're asking is for you to consider it.
Right.
And oftentimes it's an industry that's fueled by ego, and a lot of people just don't want to be told what to do. They don't want suggestions, and they don't want to have anybody interfere with their interpretation or perspective of the world. And so again, we have to start showing them that you don't have to necessarily create art surrounding our narrative, but we don't have to give you our money.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.